am Sonal Zaveri, an independent consultant, the co-chair of Eval Gender Plus, regional coordinator of GenSA, the Gender and Equity Network of South Asia, and founder and board member of the Community of Evaluators South Asia, a trustee of IOCE, as well as a board member of the International Evaluation Academy. Can evaluations themselves be transformative? Yes, if they are culturally responsive and empowering. Transformative evaluation has become more and more important as we are challenged by crises, natural and humanitarian, and because we have wicked problems, problems that have remained unresolved or resolved only partially. When we talk about change, and especially transformational change, we can define it as one that makes specific choices that are guided by considerations of gender, equity, anti-racism, anti-oppression, inclusion, and by recognizing and addressing power. So transformational change requires inclusive teams and organizations and a growing collaborative initiatives that seek to disrupt the status quo in order to influence social and environmental well-being. And in the current global context, evaluation does run the risk of becoming another service that just provides answers to those who commission them. In practice, evaluations just tend to concentrate excessively, I may say, on efficiency, effectiveness, and measurable results, rather than contributing to inclusive and democratic practice for transformative purposes, and which I feel that the evaluation community does hold as central. So we need to change our evaluation paradigm and the way we do business. Evaluators need to go into detail on how their work can improve people's lives and to take responsibility beyond just selecting the appropriate methodology or method that's capable of influencing decision-making. Yes, it is important, but we need to go beyond it. And although we may say that inclusive and participatory evaluations are gaining ground, many of these evaluations need to transform themselves. But it's not enough just to do transformative evaluation. We need to be a transformative evaluator and to focus our attention, focus the action of the evaluation to contribute to the public good. We need to look at the long-term results to unexpected consequences of our development interventions and investigate what are some of the causes of the social problems that we are trying to address. But first, let's take a step back and think about what's the context in which we do transformative evaluation. You and I both know that evaluations do not take place in a vacuum. There are many political, economic, cultural, and even technological forces that can facilitate or inhibit our results. And we need to be aware of them when we want to challenge the status quo and use change paradigms. Ultimately, evaluation is a political activity. It's not devoid of value and interest. And so evaluation processes need to be part of the change that we want to see. Challenging power relations begins by breaking the hierarchy in the relationship first between us, the evaluator, and the evaluated entity. So we need to be inclusive and have empowering processes. So yes, methodological credibility is essential to support findings, but we also need to go beyond the rigor of the analysis and understand that there may be need for new techniques and tools, and to be context specific, because that's what transformation is all about. There are a few new approaches that I would like to discuss. One of them is the blue marble evaluation that brings different perspectives, and it looks beyond the context of projects and programs, beyond national borders and between silos and sectors. It connects the global with the local. Another approach is the feminist approach. It emphasizes participatory, empowering, and the social justice agenda. And feminist approaches are always intersectional, and they include the analysis of gender, caste, sex, race, class, sexuality, religion, disability, and so many other vulnerabilities. I would say that the decade of action towards the Sustainable Development Goals and the worldwide disruptions that have resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic have really highlighted the relevance and importance of evaluation to contribute to transformative purposes, such as solving deep structural problems, challenging inequities, overcoming barriers that inhibit agility instead of moving fast towards achievement of the SDGs. So are we evaluators ready to take the challenge? We describe transformational evaluation because we contrast it with how evaluation is conventionally conducted. So conventional evaluation is driven primarily by a positivist worldview that emphasizes observation and reason to assess processes and outcomes. But if I use a transformative approach, I would want a deep understanding of which change mattered, to whom, why, and whether that was enough, and to acknowledge that there are structural inequities. So transformational evaluations question whether the verifiable results have had real impacts on the power structures that dominate the lives of the marginalized and the vulnerable. So transformative approaches address changes in behavior of individuals, organizations, as well as systems. Transformative evaluation is not really new. It's an approach that has been in development for longer than 15 years. And we can understand some of its expression by some of the work of Paulo Freire, who had called for equality mobilized communities more than 4 decades ago, and a lot of work by participatory and feminist evaluators who championed the need to include voices that are often marginalized. So when we have a transformative lens, we acknowledge that there are multiple perspectives, each expressing a different reality, where some voices are heard and some are not. It is this inequality of whose voice matters, whether we are talking of individual behavior or working with system change, that should underpin our discussion about transformative evaluation. There is an underlying principle of social justice, and that we need to assess in terms of inclusion, equity, sustainability, and fairness. So such thinking should encourage us evaluators to question the purpose of our evaluation and why we are doing it. And we are so accustomed to discussions on approaches, methodology, tools, but seldom about evaluation's contribution to equitable or societal change. So we should ask ourselves, should evaluations confine themselves to assessing outcomes and impact, or should evaluation be an empowering exercise that addresses the needs of all, and particularly those who are left behind? This is a very important shift from conventional evaluation. And we often talk about accountability, which is usually upwards. And we use terms such as value for money and the social return on investment. But when we talk about transformation, we are talking about downward accountability, participation that is not tokenistic. We're talking about revisiting predetermined theories of change and our assumptions, and to address the complexity of power asymmetries and social change processes. So ultimately, the purpose of transformative evaluation is learning, and accountability is redefined as the democratic sharing of responsibility. So essentially, transformative thinking is a paradigm shift, understanding that change itself is complex and long-term, and that we need a very nuanced worldview of how change occurs, and that the methodology and theoretical framework required in practice should be radical, unconventional, and innovative. And changes in outcomes are not to be seen as just incremental or even reform based, but truly transformative and addressing the root causes of power inequities, not just about improving performance or about just change outside the box or a few new rules, but we're talking about a fundamentally new way of addressing the phenomenon. It could be an innovation or an experiment. So transformative change redefines accountability as for the people with whom the project works for, as those who are left out. And so we will always ask what we mean by impact. What do we mean by social justice? Gender analysis and feminist theory have made fundamental contributions to this practice of transformative evaluations, applying the principles of human rights, equality, participation, and non-discrimination, and allowing us to do rigorous analysis as well. So in every evaluation, we look at the technical ability, the rigor and competence of the evaluator, which is highly significant. And we are often told to keep a certain distance from the evaluated program, but being close to the evaluated program and its actors gives us evaluators opportunities to make a difference through the evaluation process. And so a very powerful and desired competency is to lead our participants, those who are being evaluated, those systems that we are evaluating, to take responsibility for the evaluation and for the change and the transformation that follows. You know, we rarely talk about ethics in evaluation. And even if we do, we frequently focus on the formal compliance, but less so on the mechanisms that capture and can analyze how our ethical topics and even dilemmas have been tackled in the field. We often reproduce unequal power relationships during our own evaluation processes. And even human rights can be violated by action or by omission during our fieldwork. So we need to be aware of what a colleague calls unethical ethics. And we need to be transparent about the ethical dilemmas faced during the evaluation and decisions made under those circumstances. So I would like to end by saying that becoming a transformative evaluator is not a one-time effort, but a lifetime commitment. And we hope that young and emerging evaluators will take this bold step forward to ensure that they are transformative and that the evaluations that they conduct are equally transformative. Thank you.